What's up guys, my name is Aaron and today I'm going to be reviewing 24K Magic. This is the third studio album by Bruno Mars, a pop artist. He's somebody that I thought was technically really good. I felt like his singing is really good, his songwriting is pretty good. He didn't have the extra spark that elevated him to the next level, if that makes sense. He was just kind of there to me. His albums were just kind of generic to me. Really nothing that kind of stood out to me with the songwriting or anything like that. But I couldn't say that they were bad, they just kind of weren't my cup of tea, if that makes sense. Well, this album, he kind of changed some things around, and this album is to me his best album by far. It really surprised me. I think this is the biggest surprise of 2016 album wise. I think the biggest thing with this album is that it has a really good throwback style to 80s and 90s R&B and soul music. He's taking that cue from songs like Treasure and Uptown Funk. He's kind of taking that type of mold and he's making it a whole album based off of that sound. So you do hear a lot of throwback sounds, and he also kind of experiments with New Jack Swing and stuff on this album too. You see some old school producers like Babyface, Teddy Riley, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis. You see people like that on this album, and it does have that throwback feel on it. The song Chunky, my favorite single on this album, it's such a feel-good dance track that you don't really hear from these days. I love the synths that play on that track, the female chorus that plays on the track as well. It has this distinct 90s R&B style that I really like. That's what I like. That kind of reminds me of a mid-2000s R&B track you would hear from people like Lloyd or The Dream. It's just kind of a T.I. verse away from being of that era. I love the piano on that track, the huge bass, the warm synth that plays on the track. I just think that the song is just really good vibes. But my favorite song of this is definitely Finesse. It's a throwback to New Jack Swing, songs like Poison and Do You Remember the Time, that type of era. So it does legit sound like something from that era. It doesn't sound like he's just imitating it. It just legit sounds like a relic of that era. The drums that are on that track, the vocalized synth that's on that track as well, the keyboard, etc. It really does feel like those songs. It doesn't feel like he's just imitating it. It just sounds like a lost relic that just happened to show up on a 2016 album. Yeah, people have been bringing back 80s pop nowadays, and I do think that that's cool, but this guy is kind of bringing back 80s R&B, 90s R&B, and the soul music of those eras. I mean, that's kind of different than what everybody else is doing nowadays, and I feel like he's making it his own kind of. He's paying tribute to it, but he's not just doing it. He's actually putting his own spin to the music, and I do like that. I like the lyrics to this album too. There's a certain innocence and a lot of sweetness to the album that you don't really hear in modern music nowadays. The song Versace on the Floor, I like how it's a sex song, but it's not overly gratuitous or vulgar, if that makes sense. It's really just about how him and this girl have this strong connection, and things lead to another thing, and he asks her to take off the dress and just leave on the floor. He's not being too gratuitous with the sexual innuendos, but you do get what the song is about. It kind of reminds me of songs by people like Marvin Gaye or Michael Jackson. The song Perm has a double meaning. It refers to perm, the relaxer that black women use in their hair. He's also using that as a metaphor to tell the girl to calm down. She's kind of excitable and just get on the floor and just start dancing with him. It kind of has that 70s vibe to it to me. It kind of sounds like it'd be on the soundtrack to The Get Down. And then Calling All My Lovelies, I like that song too. I like the lyrics on that song. He's pretty much talking about calling his side girls because the girl that he wants to be with and stuff, she's kind of ignoring his calls. She's not picking up his calls, and it kind of gives me a R. Kelly vibe, the way that he's telling the story and stuff like that. It really gives me an R. Kelly vibe, and kind of the music too. Yeah, I like that he can be kind of intimate and kind of playful, but he doesn't lead to vulgarity, and he doesn't just talk about bragging and stuff like that. I like that it kind of has that playful vibe, that it doesn't devolve into kind of debauchery that you kind of hear in music nowadays. It's a nice throwback to the earlier music, and I do feel like his voice is pretty on point on this album. I feel like his voice really fits the throwbackness of the 80s and 90s music. He sounds cool on tracks like 24K Magic and Chunky. I feel like he sounds really kind of cool on those more upbeat songs. On the slower songs like Too Good to Say Goodbye and Straight Up and Down, he sounds really sensual and kind of intimate, but again, he's not really that vulgar with the way that he sings and stuff like that. I feel like this throwback vibe kind of fits his voice really well. You really get to see the range, the dynamicness of his voice. Yeah, I thought this album was great. I felt like I loved the throwbackness of this album to 80s and 90s R&B and soul music. I like the innocent kind of heartfelt lyrics. It didn't feel modernized, if that makes sense. It was a nice throwback to kind of a more innocent day. I feel like his voice really complements the switch in tone a lot. You can really hear how good his voice is and stuff. The only thing I didn't like, I felt like 24K Magic wasn't as good as the other songs on this. I feel like that was a weird single to use because it wasn't as strong as the other songs, but I feel like it was a decent song. It just wasn't as strong as the other ones. But that doesn't like really deter my enjoyment of the album. Yeah, overall, I would give this an A. I feel like this is like his masterpiece. Like Future Sex Love Sounds for Justin Timberlake is kind of his best album, and Confessions is Usher's best album. This is, I feel like, Bruno Mars' masterpiece, and I'm kind of skeptical to see how he's gonna go past this, because this album I feel like is kind of like the peak of Bruno Mars' talents, but we'll see. I'm excited to see where he goes. So what did you guys think? Did you like the album? Did you hate the album? Let me know in the comments what you thought, and thanks for watching. Thanks, guys.